This one's wife. Meghan batters Taylor Swift. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Through my work, you know that I have classified this one's wife as a mid-range type A narcissist. Essentially, what this means is, like any other narcissist, she pursues the prime aims. But for her, she utilizes a facade to the outside world of being a kind, considerate, loving, decent human being. It's self-serving. Behind the scenes, away from the public eye, she engages in devaluing behaviours. Harry is the individual who gets the bulk of that because he's the intimate partner primary source, and it is the intimate partner primary source that receives what is known as the sustained devaluation. So after the golden period, that individual finds themselves subjected to a host of malign manipulations, which can range from silent treatments, circular conversations, bringing up the past, triangulation with people, objects and events, physical violence, the withdrawal of sex, and many other manipulations besides. With this one's wife, her narcissism causes her to project a facade to the outside world to suggest that she is an empathic and kind individual, and she believes that own propaganda. It is not the case that she thinks of herself as a tyrant, but puts on an image. She believes that the image that she projects is her. She knows that she will engage in instances of shouting at people, but she will see it simply as correcting them, that she's not there to mollycoddle them. That if she isn't speaking to Harry, well, he did something to deserve it, and she is just keeping her own counsel. In other words, she has the awareness that she is doing something towards somebody else which would be viewed as problematic. However, it is always justified. For someone like this one's wife, invariably she projects this image of being a sweet and caring person, but because she's overexposed, we have seen the numerous cracks in the facade, the death stare, the clenched jaw, the rapid blinking, the sudden look of hatred that shot somebody's way, the talking to herself, the grabbing, the pulling, the nudging, the poking, the directing. We have seen these on many occasions. And those are instances where the facade has struggled to keep up with the churning fury, both cold and heated, that exists beneath the surface. Behind closed doors, we have heard repeated reports about her bullying staff, both in the United States and the United Kingdom, bullying Princess Charlotte, shouting matches with Harry, and so forth. All of it is entirely conceivable as a consequence of the fact that she is a narcissist. And it would come as no surprise to learn that despite the passive-aggressive image that is generated by her narcissism as a mid-range type A, that she engages in vitriolic outbursts behind the scenes. There is a show called Spitting Image, and it has been running on and off for many, many years, first started in the 1980s. And currently, they have a vehicle called The Rest is Bullshit, which is hosted like a podcast by old Fantapubes himself with a coked-up version of Paddington Bear. And periodically, this one's wife makes an appearance as they take the piss out of her cookery show. I'm not able to show you the precise clip for copyright reasons, but I wanted to bring it to your attention because they neatly identify various aspects of this one's wife's behaviours, and, similar to the way that Family Guy and South Park have ridiculed her, it's clear that there are plenty of people who do get it and know precisely what she's about. After all, this parody of her is based upon behaviours that many people recognise, otherwise it wouldn't work as a parody. In the latest clip, this one's wife is again seen in her kitchen. And it's well worth taking you through what happens to identify various aspects of her narcissism, but also how the program makers see this one's wife very clearly. This one's wife starts off stood in the kitchen wearing an apron, and she explains, "I adore finding new ways to show up lovingly." Naturally, this is part of the facade that's being projected. She continues, "This week we have one of the most famous and recognisable women in the world. Meeting Taylor Swift." Naturally, they get the grandiosity of this one's wife taking the piss out of her in that way. Taylor Swift turns up. "Hi, Meghan," she begins. "You're such a good person," which, of course, this theme occurs in each of these episodes because the makers of the rest of bullshit recognise that the whole point of the cookery show is to have a succession of people turn up and tell this one's wife that she's a good person. This one's wife responds, "And so vulnerable," which of course is all about the victimhood. She continues by explaining, "It makes me sad when people don't take the time to prepare good food for their loved ones. Today's recipe is going to take you 5 minutes. Wow," responds Taylor Swift. "That's twice as long as I spent on my new album." Some mickey taking of Swift, of course, for the formulaic way that her music is created, and the general suggestion that the latest album is rather weak. This one's wife continues by stating, "I learned this in France," which, of course, this one's wife likes to brag about the places that she's been as she engages in her customary character trait acquisition, whereby she maintains that she's learned certain things as a consequence of going to certain places. She then produces what looks like a ready meal, and brilliantly, she takes a fork and stabs the cellophane, as you invariably do when you're preparing a ready meal, and she states, "Eat, pray, love." Then she announces, "Now for the tricky part." She picks up the cardboard sleeve for the ready meal and reads, "Place in microwave." Shades of what Nigella Lawson always used to refer to. But here, this one's wife refers to the microwave. The point being is she doesn't know what that is. She continues asking, "What is microwave?" We don't have any of that. Then there is the customary call to Harry for help or an instruction. "Harry," she yells, "do we have any microwave?" As always, there's no response from Harry, who's probably playing his Xbox and bonged out of his brain somewhere else in the house. Taylor Swift chips in at this point and states, "It's a microwave, silly." Naturally, makers of the programme want to highlight the fact that this one's wife is pretty shitty when it comes to any kind of culinary activity. And here we see an excellent part of the conduct and behaviour of this one's wife encapsulated when Taylor Swift points out that she's got something wrong. There's an immediate ignition of fury as a consequence of what you know would be challenge fuel. And the response from this one's wife is, "Don't talk to me like that, you bitch," as she yells and points a finger. "I'm a fucking duchess." Again, the utilisation of the title, even though she has nothing to do with the royal family. She then picks up a chopping board and clubs Taylor Swift over the head, battering her, and announces, "Shake that off," and then hits her again. Swift hits the floor, and then, fury subsided, this one's wife turns and announces, "And now for the finishing touch, a flower," taking the piss out of her flower sprinkles as she hurls some on the now decked Taylor Swift. It's entertaining, but it also demonstrates that the makers of this programme fully understand what this one's wife is like, and they're not fooled by her facade. They see the transparency of her supposed culinary abilities. They demonstrate her preoccupation with being seen as a lovely person. They demonstrate the way that she's grandiose and full of herself and self-absorbed. And they also recognise that all it takes for her to erupt is a slight criticism. It's a parody, but it's clearly based upon understanding what she is like. And it's another example of a programme demonstrating that they have the measure of this one's wife. Whether she has seen it or not, who knows? But she certainly would not be pleased because she wouldn't recognise the individual in the programme. Again, I know that some people find that hard to believe, that she doesn't realise that that is how she is seen. For some people, it can be a shock to realise they're seen in a particular way. And those individuals have the capacity for self-reflection. I never realised people thought of me that way. I never realised that people looked at me in that manner. But with this one's wife, although she might say, what, people really think this? She'll just reject it, because that's what her narcissism does. It cannot allow any of the criticisms to land, to permeate, because that would amount to a threat to control. And as a consequence, if she were to see this clip, it would enrage her, because she wouldn't see it as accurate. She would see it as another example of bullying her, because remember, she's always the victim. I'm H.D. Tudor. Thank you for listening.